was a contestant on Irish MasterChef, and it was one of the best and worst experiences of my entire life. I have loved cooking since I was really young. One of my earliest memories is of standing on a kitchen chair in my nanny's kitchen and helping her make raspberry tarts, and just feeling really warm and content and just happy. Now, I always loved food. I didn't always have an easy relationship with food because I was overweight as a child and I was bullied relentlessly through primary school for being the fat kid and, you know, the nerdy kid and the tall kid and the asthmatic kid, because, you know, children are monsters. So that wasn't enough. Even though that knocked my confidence, it never made me come away from food, because no matter what was going on in my life, and this is true today, cooking, sharing food with people I love, like, that always just brings me back to that same warm, content, happy place. So in 2013, I had just graduated from college, and I honestly didn't know what I was going to do with my life, but I was spending a lot of time in the kitchen. When the MasterChef applications opened, I kind of looked at it and I thought, you know, sure, why not? And I applied without really ever expecting anything to happen. And a week later, I got a call to say that I was through to the first audition. And really, it all went downhill from there. So for the first audition, I had to answer a bunch of questions over the phone. And the first question was, what do you make that you would consider to be high cuisine? Now, I was 22. I had never even eaten high cuisine. So I just started making shit up. Like, I just started naming dishes I had heard of. And I discovered that if you put the word deconstructed in front of any restaurant dish, people think you know what you're talking about. So I should have been knocked out then. Instead, I was invited to the second round of auditions. For the second audition, I had to make a cold dish and bring it to the audition venue where the producer ate it, asked me a lot of questions, and filmed me at the same time. Now, I made a bay leaf panna cotta with Turkish spice figs. It was beautiful, nobody can take that away from me. But on the way to the audition, it melted. So by the time I actually got there, it was just a puddle of cream. I really should have been knocked out then, but I got through to the final audition. For the final audition, I had to live cook in front of a team of camera people. I had never cooked on gas before, and while I was heating a huge vat of oil for my tempura, I set an entire roll of kitchen paper on fire. Someone should have sent me home. Instead, I got a call to say, congratulations, you are going to be on MasterChef. So I arrived on the first day of filming at 6 a.m, sick with nerves, but really excited to get in there and start cooking. Little did I know that it would be a while, because filming a single 30-minute episode of MasterChef takes 13 hours. It was 6 hours before I even set eyes on the judges, and that was 6 hours of putting my apron on, taking my apron off, walking into the kitchen, walking out of the kitchen, giving endless interviews. So 6 hours in, I found out what I was going to be making. And we were all going to be making our signature dish. My signature dish: salt caramel profiteroles, dark chocolate ganache, rosemary honeycomb, roasted pistachio creme anglaise. A dish I had never successfully made in the time limit. I had 1 hour. It started fine. My profiteroles rose beautifully, my caramel was perfect, but it was the most distracting environment ever. There was literally a guy on a 7-foot ladder in front of me, pointing a camera down at me. To my left, one of the girls was cooking with a live lobster, and the camera crew were like obsessed with this. They kept poking it to make it do stuff. When she tried to boil it, it jumped out of the pot. So I was there going, okay, just pay attention, and I got distracted. I looked away from my creme anglaise for 2 seconds, and bam, it was scrambled egg. At this point, I was running out of time. I had to fill my profiteroles, but they were still warm. Has anyone ever watched Bake Off? Do you know what happens when you do that? All of my filling split. At this point, I realized I was kind of in over my head. But I had smiled all day. I had smiled through the whole process, and I kept smiling as I brought my dish up to the judges. And they looked at me, and they looked at each other, and they said, "We will not be tasting that." And I said, "Okay, thank you." And I brought my dish back to my bench. I thought, you know what, at least that's the worst of it over. But the producer cut filming. She said, "No, If you are going not to taste her dish, you have to give her an explicit reason. And one of the judges looked at me and he said, hasn't the poor girl suffered enough? And that absolutely broke me. It broke me. I had gone through that whole day. I brought my dish up again. I had it rejected a second time and I burst into tears. And the worst part was that all of the crying made it into the final episode. The rest of the day is a bit of a blur. I don't need to tell you that I was eliminated. That was it. My MasterChef journey was over after one episode. And I have to tell you, I was young, and as I walked out of there, I felt absolutely crushed. Like, I felt like a failure. And it brought me back to that feeling of being a child in school and just burning up with shame and embarrassment and really feeling like I just wasn't good enough. And then I went and I got the bus home, and while I was on my way home, I was struck by this thought, and it was so powerful that it has stayed with me to this day. And that thought very simply was, I have some balls. Of all those other people, and with no fear, no reservations, no self-doubt, not knowing what I was doing, I gave it my all. And I can walk away from that with my head held high. And to this day, no job interview, no presentation, no story slam has ever made me feel like I couldn't do it. Because if I could do MasterChef, I can do anything. I want to leave you with this, because 2 years after my episode aired, when honestly MasterChef was just an anecdote that I told people at parties, I got contacted by a magazine who were doing a piece on previous MasterChef contestants, and they wanted me to give an interview. And a lot of the other interviews were about how successful the contestants had gone on to be and how they'd opened their own restaurants. Mine was not like that. But I wanted to leave you with my last line of the interview, which for me really sums up the entire experience. And that is, my food is not beautiful, it is not professional, it is not high cuisine, but it is made with love and care. And for me, that is what cooking is really about. Thank you.